I've been deep diving into Daggerheart for the past couple of months, and I've found my 4 favourite things in the entire game. Things I'll be taking with me and using in all systems moving forwards. Things you should steal, though I am going to be playing Daggerheart for the foreseeable future. In this video, I'm going to be looking at why these things are so helpful, how they cut down on prep time, and make gameplay more engaging and exciting. And the first one is, we are starting with the best one, in my opinion. The environment stat blocks in Daggerheart have actually changed the way I think about encounters in TTRPGs. On the face of it, they just look like adversary stat blocks, and they kind of are. They're most often a list of potential things that could happen in any particular environment that are either triggered by players or activated by a GM when they have the spotlight or spend fear. But what this means is that next time your players are walking on a mountain pass or climbing a cliff face, you can just whip out the environment stat block for those environments and know exactly what you can throw at your players. In D&D terms, rather than say planning out individual rooms in a dungeon or thinking about saving throws that could happen on a mountain pass, you would just have a dungeon room or mountain pass environment with 1 DC for everything, and then just 3 or 4 possible things that could happen in that environment. You see here, this is the cliffside environment from the Daggerheart core rulebook, and these are its features. One is a whole mini-game about climbing a cliff, and one talks about what happens if a character falls. The mountain pass has features that cause a player to make a reaction roll because of an avalanche or icy winds. They also have adversaries that would live in these environments that a GM can just use at any point to spice things up. But it's not just natural environments. In fact, Daggerheart has 4 different types of environments. A bit like in D&D, how there's the 3 pillars: social, exploration, and combat. Daggerheart environments have exploration, social, traversal, and events. Exploration is when players are checking out a new place completely and seeing what mysteries it holds, or maybe just getting from A to B. It can also hold hazards, secrets, and enemies. Your standard dungeon is an exploration environment, I would say. Social environments are where NPCs are going to be interacting with the players, such as a bustling marketplace or a local tavern. Traversal environments are more dangerous, getting from A to B points, such as getting across a rickety bridge, climbing a cliff, or trying to get through a magical minefield. And finally, events are a little confusing, because they're not really environments, they're more things that can happen in other environments, but they work in much the same way. An example of an event is an ambush, or being ambushed, where the players are either getting the drop on someone else or getting dropped upon. Other examples are a castle siege or a cult ritual. But a lot of these environments can change and morph and exist within each other. For example, you could have an exploration environment, which is a dark, creepy crypt, and inside there you could have a traversal environment where the players have to climb down a deep hole, and at the bottom there could be a weird shopkeeper turning it into a social environment. And then an event could happen at any time, and of course you always have combat, which is a separate thing from environments, but we'll get to that. Environments also come in different difficulties too. So for level 1 characters, a GM can use tier 1 environments. For levels 2 to 4, the GM can use tier 2. 5 to 7, tier 3, and 8 to 10, tier 4. So the environments level up with the players, but you can still always use a tier 1 social environment, for example, with much higher level players. You can always just change the DC, the difficulty that they need to hit when they roll. And these are so powerful, because when I prep my session, I just need to list out some potential places my players could go, some potential environments, then get those environments prepped. And I can just improvise the rest. And you can print them out and have them ready to go at all times. So when you have enough of them, or even have made a bunch more, you'll just have so many of them for so many different occasions. You'll fundamentally be able to run a session with 0 prep, because wherever the players go, you just have to look at the environment you already have. It tells you what you can do to them and what enemies could appear to fight them. But for me, it just means that prep time is less like a scene by scene breakdown of things that might not even happen, and more like, okay, I've got a bunch of resources, let's see what happens tonight. But there is an issue. The Daggerheart core rulebook only has a certain amount of environments in it. The ones they have are really good, but to get the most out of them, we're going to have to create our own. Luckily, the Daggerheart homebrew kit tells us exactly how to do it. Also, looking to bring more immersion to your tabletop games, Describe, the sponsor of this video, has everything you need. Ready to use descriptions for NPCs, spells, and locations, plus gorgeous maps. And with Opus, Describe's audio web app, you get access to over 7,000 AI-free music tracks, sound effects, and ambiances from any winning composers. You can even upload your own audio and stream it straight to your players, mix tracks, fade in ambience, and set the perfect mood, all from your browser. Check out Describe and Opus today, the link's in the description, and thanks to Describe for sponsoring this video. So after reading the homebrew kit, the way I think I want to make environments moving forwards is this. Base the difficulty of the environment on the tier of the players. So if the players are level 1, then a difficulty of 10 is a good place to start. This means that anytime the players roll against this environment, the number they have to beat is 10. As the environments get more dangerous and complex, this difficulty will increase. For this environment, I want to make it a little bit more challenging, even though it is for level 1s, so I'm going to say a difficulty of 12. Now let's pick the type. My favorite environments are traversal, so let's go with that. And you could argue that this is also exploration, but yeah. So now you need to think about the environment itself. What is it? So I kind of want it to be something I can pull out often, and what first comes to mind is simply some kind of dangerous woodland. I feel like I can pull that out whenever the players are traveling anywhere, anytime there's any kind of forest nearby. So we need a passive. I like the idea of this being a confusing path. The trees block out light, and the noise from the surrounding wildlife makes it harder to perceive and make it an easy path to get lost on. So any instinct checks should be made with disadvantage. Now, of course, we'll have some adversaries we can summon, but we'll get to that in a bit. First, I want a little minigame, which is a progress countdown of 4. The players need to navigate their way out of the forest. So what do they do to help figure out the right direction? Every time they succeed on a check, the countdown ticks down, and at 0, they find their way out. On a critical success, it ticks down by 3, a success with hope, it ticks down by 2, a success with fear by 1, and on a fail with hope, the countdown stays the same. And on a fail with fear, the countdown ticks back up. They get more lost. Let them try and do anything they want to find their way out. Let them be creative, but remember, if they try to simply navigate their way out, it's with disadvantage. And you can do this in D&D with just successes and failures. And if you want to know more about how these countdowns work, I talk about that later in this video. Okay, so that's the environment. In a nutshell, it's confusing and they're trying to find their way out, but that won't set them back too much as is. And I don't want it to either. It's there to just add some flavor to traveling and have a feeling of getting lost. But I also want some potential complications you may want to throw at your players. The first could be straight up spend a fear for a bear to show up. They're lost in a forest, now they're fighting a bear, or a couple of direwolves, or they come across a bear fighting a couple of direwolves. What do the players do? Now, environments usually have a reaction, where the environment reacts to something the players do, and I think if they move carelessly or talk too loudly or get too lost, then the reaction from this forest is that a creature hears them and attacks. So we have a passive and a reaction. The only other thing encounters normally have are actions, something the DM can trigger, even if the players are not triggering reactions or rolling badly. For this, I really like the idea of a boggy mire, an area of ground that is soft and muddy, and when the players step in it, they begin sinking like it's quicksand. The more they struggle, the faster they sink. I like the idea of this being an instinct reaction roll, and don't forget, instinct rolls are with disadvantage in this environment. Any player who does not hit the difficulty is now sinking in the mud. What do they try to do to get out? What do their allies do to help? I actually think this is a really solid first attempt at an environment, and I'm going to flesh it out more and create some others, once again, thrown up on my Patreon. But yeah, this was fun to throw together, and now I just always have this for whenever the players end up in a forest or woodland setting. And these kind of encounters can totally be used in other systems too. Obviously the mechanics are different, but it would not be too hard to make them work for D&D. Just take out any hope and fear mechanics, change the adversaries out, and tweak what's left to make it make sense. I truly believe these will make any system much easier to run with less prep, unless you are a GM who really wants to keep tight control over everything. At the very least, these stat blocks can be a great place to start when coming up with encounters in your games. The next Daggerheart feature I absolutely love is countdowns. These countdowns can tick down to something good happening, or something bad happening, or just something happening, or just something neutral happening. And the ticks can be triggered a bunch of ways, whether it's anytime a player rolls, or anytime they roll with fear or hope, or every time the GM spends fear, or every time the player's long rest. It can truly be anything. It's up to the GM what the triggers are for each individual countdown. In Daggerheart, it's normal to track a countdown using get dice. Whichever number the dice is on is its current number, and every time it ticks down, it goes to the number below. It's just a timer counting down. But you can track it any way you want. You can use dice in front of your players or behind the GM screen, or you can just mark it on a piece of paper or use tokens or an abacus. The point is, the timer is ticking down till something happens. But for it to have the desired effect, the players do need to know about it. You don't have to show them the dice and tell them the mechanics, though that's what I do because they start to sweat when they see how close it is to going off. But you can also hide it, tell them there's a countdown, or just describe it in narration. The bridge is creaking and cracking. It does not seem like it can hold all your weight, and it feels like it's going to drop at any moment. The players know there's a countdown, but they don't know how long it is, or how the GM is tracking it. But the GM may have planned for every time a player takes any movement at all, it ticks down from 3 to 2 to 1, and the bridge falls. When coming up with your own countdown, you just need to think of 3 things. 1, what activates the timer? In the bridge situation, is when a certain number of players step on the bridge at the same time. 2, what advances the timer, and what does the timer start on? In a bridge situation, let's say the timer starts at 4 and it ticks down every time the players move. And 3, what happens when the timer hits 0? Obviously there's no 0 on this dice, but when 1 ticks to whatever the next one would be. And in this case, it's the bridge falling. The reason I think countdowns like this are so good is that I don't always just like things happening when I decide they should happen in other TTRPGs. When I used to GM D&D, it might just be that I decide the bridge falls at the most opportune time for the story. Or I would have an NPC give up valuable information when it made sense for them to do so. And you can still do that, even in Daggerheart. I'm not saying replace that system, but having a countdown till the bridge falls, or having the NPC give up that information when the players have successfully rolled to persuade them a certain number of times, adds a feeling that this world and story is out of the GM's hands. It's more exciting for everyone, in my opinion. And I also find it leads to a less player versus GM vibe, because a player could think the GM only dropped the bridge at that certain point because they were stood on that bridge at that point. It's a direct attack. All players could feel like it was railroady, like the bridge was always going to fall and there was nothing they could do about it. Well, the countdowns mean there is something they can do about it, but the GM can still control how likely something is going to happen with how they set the timers. And there's also the golden opportunity rule in Daggerheart, which goes hand in hand with this. If something does happen in the story, or if the players do something that mean that the bridge falling is the best thing that could happen for the story, that's a golden opportunity. A GM should just make that happen. But for when it's not a golden opportunity, when it's not that important, let the dice decide. Also, ticking clocks just make everything more interesting, whether the players are stressing out about what will happen when it hits 0, or just excitedly waiting to find out. And the core rulebook gives 4 examples of countdowns, and I'll talk through them real quick. You got the standard countdown, which is just straight down, 3, 2, 1, something happens. Then you have the dynamic countdown, which ticks down, 3, 2, 1, but also can tick back up again, 2, 3, 4. This countdown feels more like a tug of war, and you could use it in something like the players having an arm wrestle. You start from 3, and if it hits 1, the player loses the arm wrestle. If it hits 6, the player wins an arm wrestle. The player just does strength check after strength check, and every time they succeed, it ticks up. Every time they fail, it ticks down. The core rulebook goes into way more details about this. There can be a lot of triggers. Rolling with fear can tick it down, failing can tick it down, but rolling failure with fear can tick it down twice. Same with hope and successes. And a critical success could tick it up 3 times, for example. And there could be many different triggers that move this up and down. You also don't need to use a d6, by the way. You can use any dice, whatever number you want. The third countdown is the chase countdown. And I'm really not going to talk much about this because it gets pretty complex. It's all in the core rulebook. But pretty much, rather than just having the 1 countdown, you have 2 countdown dice. One is measuring how far the person being chased is getting away, and the other one is measuring how close the chasers are getting to them. It's a really interesting way of doing chases, and if you show both dice to the players, it can make for a very exciting encounter. I've literally just thought about this now while filming, but you could also use it for gambling games. Maybe the player characters go to horse racing and you can use multiple dice to track multiple horses and where they are on the racetrack. And then the fourth counter is long-term counters. Now these work very differently from all the others because for one, it might be weeks, months or years that these counters go for, and the triggers could be something more like every day that passes, or every long rest the players take, or every time the players level up, for example. And this is something you'll need to track on paper. You couldn't really do it with dice because every time the counter ticks down, every time the players do that long rest, something new happens. For example, the GM might set a counter counting down to when an army is going to invade the current city the players are in. So you may start at 6, and every week that passes, it ticks down to 5 to 4. But once it ticks down to 5, people in the city are hearing rumors of an army approaching. When it ticks down to 4, the army has been sighted, it's definitely coming. When it ticks down to 3, the city is amassing its own army to defend against the invaders. Number 2, there's an assassination attempt against the leader of this city. And when it hits 1, the armies invade. It's an all-out battle. And when 1 ticks down to nothing, the battle is over. Who won? And all these countdowns, whether it's short-term or long-term, mean your players get to experience the passing of time, or a mechanical TTRPG passing of time. Whether it's seconds or months, there are consequences, not only to the players doing things and taking actions, but to time passing itself. The bridge fell because the players activated it, are on there moving around and causing it to weaken, but also because the bridge can only hold their weight for a certain amount of time. Okay, my next favourite feature of Daggerheart is campaign frames. These are quick start guides to entire settings and different styles of play, almost like different genres. Their main purpose is to help you create a campaign quickly and give you and your players a very clear idea of the world. And thanks to the homebrew guide again, we know exactly what goes in to creating a campaign frame. And there's absolutely no reason you cannot use something like this in other TTRPGs too. So let's create our own campaign frame. You start with the title. Some of the titles in the core rulebook are ones like Age of Umbra or Beast Feast or Motherboard. It's kind of just like the title of a book or a movie or a video game. Next, we need a concept that the homebrew guide describes as an evocative one-sentence description of the big idea that defines the campaign frame and should quickly convey what the campaign frame is about. For my campaign frame, Echoes of the World Hearts, I want to go with an epic journey leads your heroes across the land in search of powerful relics that will help them defeat great evil. It's very basic and unoriginal, but I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Next up is a complexity rating, which is just a 1 to 4 rating about how difficult this will be to run. I think Echoes would be a 2, simply because it is incredibly vanilla fantasy, but it is quite sprawling. Then you need a pitch, which I won't bore you with here, but I will be creating this campaign frame at some point and throwing it up on my Patreon. Then tone and feel. Like I said, vanilla fantasy world, nothing too exciting here. Then themes. This is where campaign frames really start to get interesting, because it gets you thinking about what you and your players want to explore. Maybe it's love, aging, global warming, family versus found family. What is the new punk rock? It could be absolutely anything you want to explore, but thinking about this will make your campaign stand out compared to others. Then the homebrew guide asks you to think about touchstones, which is just a list of other media that inspires the campaign. This is useful to do because when you're halfway through a campaign and you're getting muddled up in everything, you can look back at this and think about where it all started and what vibes you were going for and get things back on track. Then we get an overview section, which dives in deeper to what players can expect. Then we get a section on heritage and classes, what are available, do any work differently in this setting. Then we get the player principles and GM principles, which explore what the players and the GM want to get out of this and gives them a kind of code of conduct for the campaign. Then we have distinctions, which is what makes this world unique. And this could be how magic works, or the history of the world, or how society works. For my world, a distinction is world hearts. These are ancient stones that have a ton of magical energy stored inside them. They are incredibly rare and most often found in the world's most dangerous places. No one knows where they came from, but they're rumored to be remnants from when the world was created. Then you have Inciting Instant, which is the thing that kicks off the whole campaign, or could kick off the whole campaign. For me, it's a prophecy that a powerful demigod plans to destroy the world, and the player's characters are sent on a quest to get more powerful so they can defeat said demigod. And then custom mechanics. Does this campaign have any mechanics the players should know about that are different from the norm? Echoes of the World Heart does. One big mechanic actually, and that is that when the players come across a World Heart they absorb its power, and they level up. This means there is logic to why the players keep getting more powerful and gives them a reason to seek out these world hearts because it literally makes them stronger. I hate how in a lot of campaigns the players just go to sleep one night, level up, and the next day they can fly. Then we get Session 0 questions and a campaign map that allow you to build out the world together with your players before the game officially starts. And out of all these features on this list, the campaign frames are the ones that I think most GMs won't get a ton of use out of. It won't help you in everyday games, not like environments and countdowns would, but it is a really interesting exercise to make your campaign into a campaign frame. It gets you thinking about it in a different way and allows you to really figure out what you want to accomplish from the game. But it's not life-changing unless the industry catches on and publishes more frames like this. Adventure modules and setting books are usually what you get for games like D&D, and they are big chunky boys that are often too much. Sometimes you just want a summary of a world and an adventure with some cool mechanics, and then you can just run with it. So I'm hoping we start to see more campaign frames like the ones in the Daggerheart core rulebook published, not just for Daggerheart but for other TTRPGs too. It will streamline the process and streamline getting some information and getting started in your game. Next up is of course collaboration, world building, and player trust. Now when I've made videos like this in the past, I've had a ton of comments saying these things I'm talking about exist in other TTRPGs. So I just want to say, I understand that. These can be a thing in D&D, or Pathfinder, or they might even be built into a system that I just don't know about. But they're also in Daggerheart, and I think Daggerheart really leans into them in a unique way, which like I said, might happen in other TTRPGs, but it doesn't matter. But in Daggerheart, you're expected to collaborate with your players a ton, whether it is in a Session 0 building out the world together, or in-game asking players to narrate what is happening or describing an environment. It's certainly not something I've seen often used in D&D, where the GM is mostly the driver of the car and players will be chastised trying to touch the wheel. In Daggerheart, you let the players steer occasionally. And when I've mentioned this style to people, I've heard some concern about maybe players not doing the best things for the story. Maybe they do something the rest of the table doesn't like, or maybe they just do something selfish. But that's the beauty of Daggerheart here. I mean, one, the GM is still in charge and can always veto players, but two, it certainly opened me up to trusting my players more. Turns out most of my friends aren't selfish. Turns out they're all creative, kind people who want to play TTRPGs the way they were intended to be played. I know, who would have thought? And it's this that I will be stealing from Daggerheart above all else moving forward. Building the world and crafting a compelling story with my players, not for them. We work together to craft an experience for the entire table. It genuinely has changed the way I kind of think about TTRPGs, and it's made me realize that I don't have to prep every single little thing, and if I ever have a moment where my brain freezes and I can't improvise, I just ask my players to do it for me. But yeah, thanks for watching.